You don't need to savor a seat, my aunt snapped, her voice slicing through the light chatter in the hotel ballroom like a knife. Her perfectly manicured fingers pointed toward the entrance, without even glancing back. She doesn't belong at our table. A few of my cousins laughed, soft but deliberate, like they'd been waiting to echo her words for years. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos? And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. I stood just inside the grand doors of the Hilton Banquet Hall, gripping my clutch like a lifeline. The golden chandeliers above caught the shimmer of the silver pin in my hair, but it did nothing to ease the weight pressing down on my chest. My heels clicked against the marble floor as I considered turning around. For a split second, I actually did. I looked over my shoulder. I could leave, walk out quietly, pretend like it didn't sting. But before I even took a full step, I heard the first flash pop. Click. Flash. Then another. And another. Reporters. Cameras. Shouting. Ms. Lennox. Over here. Was the acquisition finalized this morning? What do you say to those accusing the merger of undercutting Delman Enterprises? Do you have a statement for your investors? My family froze. My aunt's mouth hung open like someone had just snatched the champagne flute right out of her hand. I slowly turned back, my pulse steady, my back straightened on its own. All eyes were on me now, my family's judgmental stares clashing with the wild flashing lights of the local press. I gave a soft smile to the cameras but said nothing yet. Let them wait. Let it build. A moment later, I heard the voice of a woman I recognized, Kendra Fielding, the sharp business correspondent from City Ledger News, push through the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Amelia Lennox, the CEO of Lennox Tech, and as of this morning, the new majority stakeholder in Delman Enterprises, she announced, turning dramatically toward the ballroom guests. Today marks the largest female-led merger in state history. The silence in the room was deafening. Someone at the table dropped their fork. I didn't turn to see who. My gaze was fixed on my aunt's face, frozen, pale, the corners of her mouth twitching as if her brain couldn't quite compute what had just happened. I walked toward the front table, their table, without asking permission, without waiting for someone to offer me a chair. My mother sat there too, quiet and awkward, pretending to sip from an empty glass, her eyes darting between me and the stunned faces surrounding her. I pulled out the seat they'd been trying so hard to guard, the one they claimed wasn't mine, and sat down slowly, deliberately. I'd say thank you for saving me a seat, I murmured, just loud enough for my aunt and cousins to hear, but I see it was already mine to begin with. The camera flashes started again. This time slower. More intentional. The way a storm slows right before the lightning strikes again. A few seats down, my cousin Leah stammered. Why, you're the one who bought out Delman? That's Grandpa's company. I looked at her evenly. It was. Then I turned back to my aunt. She was blinking rapidly, trying to collect herself, lips tight. She finally found her voice, brittle and disbelieving. You're her daughter. You were barely getting by. Working at a coffee shop last we heard. That was 4 years ago, I interrupted gently, swirling the glass of water in front of me. While you were planning this reunion, I was closing a 9-figure deal. The room was still quiet, until my uncle, Ronald, a man whose ego walked 2 steps ahead of him everywhere, cleared his throat loudly and leaned forward. This is all just a stunt, he muttered, his voice trembling with misplaced authority. You don't even belong in the industry. You never went to Wharton like the rest of us. You were, what? A high school dropout with a website. I met his stare without flinching. You're right. I never went to Wharton. But I hired 2 of your Wharton classmates last year. I replied. They work in my New York office. Want me to say hi for you? His face flushed dark red. I wasn't done. I was told for years that I wasn't good enough. Not smart enough. Not like the rest of the Lennox family. And I believed it, until the day I realized my strength wasn't in fitting in, it was in walking away. A hushed murmur rippled through the guests who'd stopped mid-bite to watch everything unfold. "You all laughed when I failed," I said louder now. "You said I was chasing nothing, that I embarrassed this family, that no one would ever take me seriously." I stood up slowly, glass still in hand. "But today you're sitting at my table. And whether you like it or not, this family has a new head now." And then, with every camera still pointed at me, I raised the glass. To starting over. The clinks were slow, hesitant, but they came. Even from some of the cousins who once joined in mocking me. And my aunt? She didn't touch her glass at all. She just stared, still frozen. The look of power slipping from her fingers like sand she couldn't clutch anymore. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just a reunion anymore. This was my arrival. The cameras faded, but the silence at the table lingered like smog. My aunt, Vivian Lennox, finally moved, but only to adjust her pearl necklace, the one she'd inherited from Grandma before she had the nerve to tell the rest of us it was too delicate for a girl like Amelia. Her hands were trembling. Good. Leah looked like she'd seen a ghost. She kept glancing between me and her father, Ron, as if waiting for one of them to yell prank and return the reunion to its regular programming. But it wasn't coming. I didn't flinch as the room swallowed me whole. Instead, I adjusted the folded linen napkin across my lap, uncapped the chilled bottle of water in front of me, and leaned into the table like I belonged there. Because I did. For the first time in years, I truly did. Across from me, Ron's wife Jennifer gave a half-hearted laugh. "Well, look who grew up," she said, her tone trying to be playful but coming off more bitter than sweet. "You clean up well, I'll give you that." "You mean I don't look like someone who sleeps in her car anymore?" I replied, sipping my water. "That's what you told my mom 2 years ago, right? When she tried to invite me to Aunt Valerie's funeral?" Jennifer's smile cracked. The air tightened. My mother, seated 2 chairs away, finally found the courage to speak. "Amelia, honey, maybe we should talk, just the 2 of us." I turned to her. "Sure. Let's talk. I'd love to hear why you stayed silent every time they humiliated me." Her face fell. She didn't deny it. She just folded her hands in her lap and looked down like the linen had the answers she never did. I stood up, pushing my chair back slowly. "Actually, let's talk now. All of us. Since you've spent years whispering behind closed doors about how I wasn't one of you. Since I wasn't invited to Cousin Jacob's wedding. Since I found out through Instagram that Grandpa's cabin was sold. Since every one of you convinced yourselves I was a failure." A pause. Newsflash. I didn't disappear. I worked. I built something while you all judged. And now the name Lennox doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the woman you kicked out. My Uncle Ron scoffed. "Is that what this is? A power play?" I leaned forward, resting my palms on the table. "No," I said. "This is justice." Silence. Tension choked the air. Just then, someone tapped on my shoulder. I turned. It was Liam. He wore a navy suit, clean-cut, my head of public affairs. Calm, reliable. My right hand ever since I launched Lennox Tech. The guy who stood by me when all I had was a half-broken laptop and Wi-Fi stolen from the laundromat next to my old studio apartment. "Amelia, the governor's press team wants to schedule a follow-up for tomorrow morning," he whispered. "They said to congratulate you again," and he lowered his voice. "They're calling this the comeback story of the decade." My lips twitched into a satisfied smile. "Tell them I'll call tonight," I said. "And to have their comms director send a media kit. Let's stay ahead of this." Liam nodded. "Got it." As he stepped away, I caught the disbelieving look in my aunt's eyes. "You brought an entourage to a family reunion?" she snapped. I shrugged. "You brought arrogance. At least my guest list has a purpose." Across the room, people had started whispering. A few distant relatives and old family friends were watching closely now. Some with surprise, some with shame. All with interest. I glanced back at the table. "By the way," I added, "I bought this hotel last month." They blinked. I wasn't going to say anything, I said, running my fingers across the edge of the tablecloth. But then again, It seems some of you still don't recognize who I am. So let me spell it out. I lifted my hand and motioned to the head waiter. He walked over briskly. Yes, Ms. Lennox? Clear table 7 after dessert, I said calmly. They're done here. The color drained from Vivian's face. You can't do that, she hissed. I stood tall, shoulders squared. I just did. They didn't move immediately, but the servers were already coming. Quiet, polished, unbothered. My family finally rose, one by one, like children being dismissed from class. They moved stiffly, humiliated, gathering their things while pretending not to care. My uncle grabbed his coat. My cousins avoided my eyes. They weren't just angry. They were confused. Because people like them never think the ones they step on will rise above them. But I had. I wasn't the forgotten niece anymore. I was the storm they didn't see coming. As they walked off, I sat again. Calm, poised, unshaken. Kendra Fielding passed by on her way out, raising her phone like a toast. That was gold, Amelia. Pure gold. The public is going to eat this up. I didn't smile. Because this wasn't about headlines. This was about healing. And I hadn't even started. I didn't plan to leave the ballroom right away. I wanted them to know I stayed. I stayed in the room they tried to erase me from. I wasn't some ghost passing through. I was now the one casting shadows. I sat at the now empty table and reached for my untouched dessert. The chocolate mousse was rich, delicate, a luxury I once thought I'd never taste again. Funny how life changes. I took a small bite just as Leah returned. She stood beside the table awkwardly, twisting a napkin in her hand. I didn't know, Amelia, she said quietly. I mean, no one told me you were doing all this. We thought you moved away, and you kind of disappeared. I met her eyes. I had to disappear, I replied. You all made sure there wasn't a place for me here. Leah lowered her gaze. We were just kids back then. I didn't mean to be cruel. I placed my fork down gently. Cruelty doesn't care about age, Leah. You were old enough to laugh when they joked I'd end up barefoot, working behind a diner counter. She flinched at that. I sighed, softer this time. But I'm not here to settle every score. Then why are you here? She asked honestly. I thought about it. Because I needed to see their faces when they realized the girl they threw away didn't vanish. She rebuilt herself. Leah hesitated, then nodded slowly. I deserved that. She walked off after that, quieter, no fake smiles. I glanced down at my watch. I didn't realize how quickly time had passed. My car was waiting outside, but I wasn't ready to leave yet. The ballroom was still half full. Distant relatives murmured among themselves. Some glanced my way, others pretended not to. But I could feel it, something had shifted tonight. As I stepped outside into the hallway, the cool air hit me. Finally, space to breathe. Liam stood waiting near the elevator. You okay? He asked. I shrugged. It's strange. I thought I'd feel more triumphant. He nodded. Revenge doesn't always feel like fireworks. Sometimes it just feels quiet. Yeah. We walked in silence until we reached the elevator. I tapped the call button, then turned to him. Remember when I was crashing on your couch? Eating dollar ramen for every meal? You mean last decade? He grinned. You wouldn't stop talking about this tech idea you had, voice pattern-coded scheduling AI. Everyone else thought it was ridiculous. I thought it was genius. And you let me build it in your garage, I said, smiling faintly. Even when your girlfriend hated it. She hated a lot of things. The elevator doors opened. But I didn't step in. I want to stop by someone's house before we head out, I said suddenly. Family? Not exactly. An hour later, we pulled up to a modest one-story house on Willow Avenue. Lights were on inside. Curtains slightly parted. I walked alone up to the door. When it opened, I came face to face with her. Mrs. Thompson, my high school business teacher. Her eyes widened. Amelia? I hope it's not too late. She ushered me in immediately, warmth radiating from her like always. I've been seeing the headlines, she said. But I didn't know if I should reach out. I didn't want to intrude. You were never an intrusion, I said honestly. You were the only person who believed in me back then. She smiled, eyes misty now. You told me once, I said, that sometimes the best revenge is success delivered with grace. I didn't understand it then. And now, she asked softly. Now I do. She reached over and squeezed my hand. You've come a long way, Amelia. But don't let the past anchor you too long. You have more to build than just proving them wrong. I nodded. That night, I didn't go back to the hotel. I sat on her old couch, sipping warm tea, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to fight to be seen. I just was. I woke up the next morning to my phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand beside me. For a second, I thought it was an alarm. But it wasn't. It was dozens of notifications, emails, texts, headlines. Liam had already left me 3 voicemails by the time I pressed play. Amelia, call me now. Someone leaked a story. A big one. It's all over the morning broadcasts. Delman's former board members are claiming your acquisition was done through manipulation and pressure tactics. I sat up straight. Of course. I should have seen this coming. I called Liam immediately. They're saying I what? I snapped. That you used insider contacts and pressured banks to drop Delman's remaining financing line. They're trying to paint you as a corporate predator. They weren't saying that last week when they begged me to buy them out quietly. They're desperate, Liam said. They lost. And they're trying to make you look like the villain. I stood, pacing across the small guest room in Mrs. Thompson's house. Let them talk. Amelia, we can't just ignore this. There's a press conference being scheduled. A few ex-board members, one of your cousins, Matthew, he's listed as a speaker. I stopped cold. Matthew? He was one of them. I gave him a job, Liam. I handed him a position last year when no one else would. I know, but he's part of it now. They're cornered, and he's just trying to save himself. I closed my eyes, jaw tight. My own blood. The second they felt my power shake their comfort, they decided to turn. I'll handle it, I said. 3 hours later, I walked into the glass tower that bore my name, Lennox HQ. The elevator ride up was quiet, reflective. The last time I was here, I had the world cheering me on. Today, it felt like knives were being sharpened behind every screen. The boardroom was already filled. My legal team, PR, even my CFO looked tense. I sat at the head of the table, composed, controlled. Let's make something clear, I said. This story isn't about ethics. It's about ego. They can't handle that someone like me, the girl they mocked, dismissed, and labeled a failure, outplayed them in the open. Amelia, we need a public counter-narrative, Vanessa, my head of comms, said. If we let them control this narrative for more than 24 hours, it'll snowball. I tapped the table lightly, thinking, do we still have the emails? Liam nodded. Every single one. We documented the entire acquisition process. Clean. Legal. Every bank signature. Every financial disclosure. Their panic won't change that. I looked up. Then we go public. Today? Vanessa blinked. I stood. No. We go now. By noon, I was standing in front of cameras again. This time not at a reunion, but on my own turf. Behind me, the massive silver Lennox Tech logo gleamed. Some of you may have heard recent claims from certain individuals. Claims meant to tarnish not only my name, but the integrity of my team, my company, and the legitimate business practices we've built from the ground up. I paused. I will not be bullied into silence. I did not get here by playing dirty. I got here by working harder than every person who once told me I didn't belong. I clicked the remote in my hand. On the screen behind me, emails began to cycle. Signatures, approvals, meeting minutes, paper trails. They didn't expect someone like me to document every step. But I did, because I've always known what it's like to be doubted, challenged, and framed. Another pause. My only mistake was thinking that blood makes someone trustworthy. The room was dead silent. But I've learned now, I said, voice steady, that family doesn't always mean loyalty. And success doesn't require permission. I walked off stage with my head high. Let them drown in their lies. Back in my office, I finally had a moment to breathe. But just as I reached for the folder on my desk, The door opened again. It was my mother. She stood at the threshold quietly, hands clutched. "Can I come in?" I didn't answer right away. Then I nodded. She walked in, sat down slowly across from me. "I watched your speech," she said. "You were powerful." I looked at her, waiting. "I should have stood up for you back then," she whispered. "I was scared. I let them control everything, even how I treated my own daughter." The silence between us stretched. "I kept hoping one day you'd come back to us on your knees, begging for forgiveness," she added. "I never thought you'd come back like this." I leaned forward, voice soft but firm. "I didn't come back to impress you, Mom. I came back to bury what you all tried to kill in me." Her eyes welled up. "I know," she said, "and I deserve that." I didn't say it out loud, but maybe that was enough for now. The next weekend, I was back in the same town where it all started, where I once waited tables and shared a cold apartment with flickering lights and paper-thin walls. Except this time, I wasn't here to hide or survive. I was here to end it on my terms. The community tech hub I'd been secretly funding for 2 years was finally opening, and I wanted to be there when the ribbon was cut. I had poured a chunk of the Delman acquisition into this place, quietly, away from headlines, because real power wasn't about press. It was about legacy. And mine wasn't going to be built on revenge alone. As I stepped onto the small stage in front of the modest new building, families clapped, kids smiled, and young women stood at the front holding laptops and dreaming bigger than I ever dared to at their age. This place is for the kids who were told they weren't smart enough, rich enough, or the right kind of people, I said into the mic. It's for the ones like me, who started at zero. A small hand reached out from the crowd. Her name was Hallie. 11. She handed me a drawing. A woman in a red blazer, standing on a mountain, holding a flag that said, "Never quit." I blinked hard. That meant more than any boardroom ever had. That evening, just before heading back to the city, I stopped by my grandfather's old house, now just a quiet shell with a faded fence and porch lights that barely worked. Matthew was there. He looked surprised when I stepped out of the car. "What are you doing here?" he asked stiffly. "Checking on what's left," I said. "Of this place and of you." He crossed his arms. "If you came to yell, don't bother. I already lost everything." I looked at him. "You didn't lose everything," I said. "You lost my trust." His jaw clenched. "I thought you'd turn the family name into something shameful." "No," I said calmly. "I turned it into something earned. There's a difference." We stood in silence, the breeze rustling the dry leaves around our feet. Then I added, "You sold your name to the same people who spat on me for years. But if you ever want to build something real, without hiding behind titles, you know where to find me." I turned and walked away. Not to prove anything. Not to win. But because I didn't owe them my rage anymore. Only my silence. And that hurt more. Back in my penthouse overlooking the city, I sat by the window alone. Liam had called earlier, investors were happy, press was shifting again in my favor, and another partnership was on the table. But none of that mattered in this quiet moment. What mattered was the stillness inside me. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for their approval. I wasn't chasing their apology. I had outgrown every insult, every door they slammed, every table they claimed I didn't belong at. Because I had built my own. And it was stronger than anything they could ever tear down.